Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Black power.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? It's Thursday, January 18, 2024, coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. California Congresswoman Barbara Lee is kicked out of a House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee hearing on Cuba policy because the Republican chair didn't like what she had to say. She joins us to tell us what she had to say and why she was kicked out. President Joe Biden stomping in North Carolina, announcing $82 million in new investments from the American Rescue Plan for rural high-speed internet. Also, he talked about how the economy is proving, specifically as it relates to African Americans and Latinos. The time is ticking for the Biden administration to decide about the ban on menthol cigarettes. Carol McGruder, co-founder of and co-chair of the African American Tobacco Control Leadership Council, will join us to discuss it. The Department of Justice report of the 2022 Uvalde mass shooting points out critical mistakes that cost the lives of 21 children. And what would Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s stance be on DEI? Well, some white billionaires and conservatives are up in arms against DEI, saying he will be against it. But conservative Chris Metzler, Dr. Chris Metzler, will join us to say they are dead wrong. Plus, Spelman College got the largest ever single donation to an HBCU. Their president, Dr. Helene Gale, will join me to talk about this $100 million gift. It is time to bring the funk. I'm Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, y'all. It's Roland Martin, Rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
Madam Chair, I served on the subcommittee for many, many years. I'm an African-American woman who has a point of view where in a democracy, those point of views are allowed. And you are doing exactly what you say the Cuban government is by denying myself, a member of Congress who represents the same number of constituents you represent, denying me the opportunity to present my point of view. What is wrong with this picture?
I would love to have this same type of political discourse in Havana.
Let's have it in Havana. If we normalize relations and have normal diplomatic relations where entrepreneurs can thrive in Cuba.
The only people who have that key is the Cuban regime. They could make that happen right now. And unfortunately, you have been friends with those who are not in favor of the Cuban people.
Madam Chair,
I represent
I am a friend of the United States. I am a member of the United States Congress. I am a friend of the global community, and I want to see normal relations between every country in the world and the people of the United States and the government of the United States, whether we agree or disagree. The only way we can ensure the values of democracy are promoted is being at the table, engaging with...
Fidel Castro has been the worst dictator that the hemisphere has seen since the arrival of Christopher Columbus in 1492. So the subcommittee, we are about to start this hearing in order. Thank you. The subcommittee on the Western Hemisphere will come to order. The purpose of this hearing is to discuss.
Oh, a little mayhem on Capitol Hill today as Congresswoman Barbara Lee of California, who has made frequent visits to Cuba, has spoken on this issue of relations for quite some time. She joins us right now on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Congresswoman, always glad to see you. I remember when the Obama administration established relationships with Cuba. You were there. We carried your remarks live with what was taking place. What the heck happened today? For this, first of all, on the subcommittee, are you a member of that subcommittee?
Roland, first they're trying to silence me. As a black woman, we have points of views that may not agree or disagree with the chairwoman of a committee. This is unprecedented. Never has a member of Congress been denied a waiver. I was on this committee for maybe 8 to 10 years on the Subcommittee on Appropriations, the Western Hemisphere Subcommittee. Now I'm the ranking member on the Appropriations Subcommittee that funds all of our international humanitarian development assistance, embassy security. I was chairing that committee 2 years ago when we were in the majority. And so, yes, I have been trying to normalize relations with Cuba since the 70s, mind you, when I worked for the great late Congressman Ron Dellums. This is nothing new. It's important to me that a country, an Afro-Hispanic country 90 miles away, have normal relations with the United States. The only way we can get all of the differences ironed out and talked about and discussed is having dialogue and having a movement forward like President Obama established. So I've been there many times. This chair of this committee interviewed Fidel Castro, and she has glowing things to say about Fidel Castro. So I don't know what's wrong with her. But the point is, and I thank Debbie Wasserman Schultz because she disagrees with me totally on Cuba, on Israel, on a lot of issues. But she refused to stay at the committee hearing because she was allowed the waiver and I was not. So
this right here is the notice that it was called The Myth of the New Cuban Entrepreneurs, an analysis of the Biden administration's Cuban policy. The chair there is Maria Salazar. And so explain to our viewers and listeners how this works. If you're not a member of a subcommittee, what rights and privileges do members of Congress have to attend or speak on other committees? Just explain to people who don't know the process.
Sure. The process is you ask for a waiver, the waiver is granted, regardless of which party you belong to. It has never been denied. It was denied today because I have a different point of view from the chair. Waivers for members of Congress are automatically granted. Like I said, I don't serve on that committee. I served on it for years. But that has no reason why I should be allowed or not allowed. The point is members of Congress are granted waivers to participate in committee hearings that they're not a part of if, in fact, they ask for a waiver. And that's just what we do. And so she's trying to silence me. What she's trying to do is do what the Republican extremists, MAGA Republican extremists are doing, and that's trying to ban books, trying to, defund diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. They're trying to follow Donald Trump's autocratic agenda. And what her move was today demonstrated that she really doesn't believe in democracy. She believes in only her point of view. She does not believe in the inclusion of different points of views when we talk about Cuban policy. Finally, I'll just say this. I have legislation that I'm writing on Cuban entrepreneurship. I know Cuba very well, and I know that the private sector there needs to be supported and, in fact, helped to develop their economy and to create jobs. And so there are many supporting this legislation, both Democrats and Republicans. And so for her to, on such an issue as entrepreneurship, for the Cuban people in the private sector, knowing that I'm writing this legislation is pretty suspect to me. Again, she's trying to silence me. What they do all the time in different ways, if you're an African American, if you're an African American woman, if you're a woman, if you're a person of color, this MAGA extremist party, the Republican Party, is trying to shut us out of our voice to try to dismantle this democracy and keep us marginalized. But I'm not going to let that happen.
This is the tweet that Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz of Florida posted. She said, "I was grateful Representative Maria Salazar invited me to join her hearing as we both fight for human rights in Cuba. But I refused to participate when my colleague, Representative Barbara Lee, was shut out due to her opposing views. In democracies, we debate freely and openly, even when we disagree." And so Salazar invites Wasserman Schultz to speak. Were you invited, or did you choose to show up on your own?
No, we both requested a waiver.
Got it. So both of you requested a waiver. And then so she granted the waiver to Wasserman Schultz.
But she did not agree to a waiver for Barbara Lee, because I have different points of views, and her and Wasserman Schultz agree on many issues, which is fine. I talked with Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz quite a bit about our disagreements and what we agree on. But that has nothing to do with a waiver. What has to do with a waiver is that she denied me a waiver because I disagree with her point of view, or she disagrees with mine. She doesn't even know what I was going to say. She does not know, probably doesn't even know about my legislation. She may. But once again, the issue is silencing. And I said, black women have points of views that may or may not be consistent with her point of view. So why would you say no to an African-American woman with a heck of a lot of foreign policy experience, much more than hers?
Wow, that certainly is not something that one would expect. What's your next?
Yes, it is, Roland. Yes, it is. With these MAGA extremist Republicans, that's who they are.
What's your next step?
Pardon?
What's your next step? What's next for you?
I'm going to continue writing my bill. I'm going to continue working on the organizations and the businesses who are supporting it. I'm going to introduce the bill, and it's going to be a bill about how we can help spur the private sector and entrepreneurship in Cuba. I'm going to keep at it. You know me, Roland. I'm not going to stop behind some crap from a chair of a committee who doesn't know what she's talking about and who's trying to act in an undemocratic fashion and who wants to follow Donald Trump and his autocratic lead. It's scary, though, I tell you, in terms of just how blatant they are in terms of trying to dismantle our democracy. So see it in that context. This is another one of their tactics to begin to erode our democracy so Donald Trump can come in and have a total government that does what she did today in terms of its conduct and in terms of its policies. It's shutting down opposition. And she talks about Cuba. Come on, she's doing what she claims that she opposes in terms of shutting down people, silencing people who have different points of views.
Well, Congresswoman Barbara Lee was certainly appreciated. You posted this about an hour ago. Immediately hit you and said, "Hey, I would love to have you come on." So we appreciate you taking some time to come on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Nice being with you. Thank you. I love your intro. It's a happy intro, Roland. It's beautiful, and after today, I needed that, and so thank you so much.
You can thank In Vogue for that because they actually did that song and they gifted it to me for this show, and so we appreciate them doing that.
It's wonderful. So thank you.
All right, thanks so much.
Made me smile.
All right, appreciate it. Glad to make you smile. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Folks, we're going to go to the break. When we come back, I'm going to actually play for you the live feed from that hearing. And Congresswoman Lee said that when she started talking, they actually cut the microphone. I'm going to play that for you when we come back right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
We just have one of the oldest cultures that's desperately needed for mutual salvation. That's the consciousness. We have the keys in our roots to save mankind. We get to see the condition of other countries, other oceans, other cultures. And if we believe in God, a lot of us do, He's telling us if you don't get rid of that stuff that makes somebody superior or inferior and work together for the mutual salvation, everybody's gone.
Next on The Frequency, we're talking about racism. My guest, Danica Moore, comes on to discuss her fight against racism that she and her daughter face.
The thing about racism, you can't outrun it, you can't control it, you can't predict when it's going to happen to you or your seed.
She's also going to give us solutions on how to handle the situation. That's here on The Frequency on the Black Star Network.
John Murray, the executive producer of the new Sherry Shepherd Talk Show.
This is your boy, Earthquake.
And you're tuned in to
Roland Martin, Unfiltered.
All right, folks, glad you could join us right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. So this hearing that took place today on Capitol Hill, I'm going to show you the beginning of this hearing. And what actually took place. You can see how this thing unfolded. So watch this.
Hearing will come to order.
Chairwoman, I wanted to ask unanimous consent for Representatives Debbie Wasserman Schultz of Florida and Barbara Lee of California, both senior members of the Committee on Appropriations, to participate in this hearing after all members have had their chance to question the witnesses.
Thank you for that request. Debbie Wasserman Schultz is more than welcome. Barbara Lee is not.
Can I ask you the reasoning, Chairwoman? The reason I ask.
Oh, I can tell you about the reasoning is because Barbara Lee, who I know is a distinguished member of the Democratic Party, is a friends with the oppressors and not with the Cuban people. Barbara Lee has been friends with Fidel Castro, and she was. There are many statements that we can repeat. And that indicates that she is just not with the people that I represent, who are the Cuban exile community in Miami.
Sure.
She is not a friend of the Cuban people that we are trying to liberate.
Point of personal privilege, if I could respond really quick. Chairwoman, you know I respect your work, even though our positions on different issues with respect to the Western Hemisphere and Latin America are sometimes far apart. I respected your voice and your work and the policy that you've worked on, but this move to not allow one of our colleagues in the United States Congress, who's been elected by the people she represents, to sit and participate on a panel like this is, I think, unprecedented. If it's happened before, I don't know about it. And I know that, like many, you have been critical of the government in Cuba, in part because it suppresses free speech and suppresses different opinions. And so without getting to the substance of your critique of Congresswoman Lee, Chairwoman, that's exactly what you're doing right now, is you're suppressing somebody from even sitting here and participating in the same way that the Cuban government has suppressed opinion and perspective for decades.
My dear colleague, Cuban people do not have a platform to express themselves like distinguished lady Barbara Lee or Congresswoman Barbara Lee has had, because she has been able to go to many media outlets. She's been able to express her admiration for Fidel Castro, but this is not the site to do that. She has no position, or she is not welcomed on this committee that I humbly chair. So I thank you very much for your request, but not this time. Therefore, the subcommittee on the Western Hemisphere will come.
Now, folks, I want y'all to let this continue to go because Congresswoman Lee said when she began to speak, they cut the audio. So you cannot hear her speak. That's why this video here that she posted on her on her Twitter feed, pull the video up, y'all. That's why this video was posted, because now you got an opportunity to hear her speak. And so you can put this in a 2-box. You'll see where she's speaking, but the actual feed that's on the YouTube channel, they actually cut the audio so you would not hear her. That's really what they did. So let's do this. Let's just go back to the other video. Let's keep that video going. I'm going to bring in my panel because I want to hear where that audio picks back up. Do we have it there?
The United States and the government of the United States, whether we agree or disagree, the only way we can ensure the values of the
Let's kill the video from her Twitter feed. I only want to kill that one. I want the video from my iPad. So you see how that's going on. Like they cut the video. So I just want to introduce the panel. Keep that going right now. My panel today is Lauren Victoria Burke. She's a writer with the NNPA, coming to us from Arlington, Texas. Dr. Greg Carr, Department of Afro-American Studies, Howard University, Washington, D.C. John Quell Neal, trial lawyer with the John Quell Neal firm out of Atlanta. Greg, I want to start with you because here's the thing here. Here's the thing here that people don't quite understand. And that is, fine, let's go to the panel, folks, and then I will keep the audio up because I want to hear when they come back from that hearing. First of all, people don't have any understanding of the relationship between African Americans and Cuba. You heard Salazar talking about how Congresswoman Barbara Lee is against the Cuban people. No, she's not. But this is the difference between what we know as white Cubans in this country, that group out of Florida that has despised Fidel Castro, and Afro-Cubans, and you've always had this bad blood here, and you've had many of them who never liked the fact that CBC members and African-American civil rights leaders and others had relationships and understandings with Fidel Castro in Cuba.
That's right. That's right. Shout out to Barbara Lee, who has always been consistent on the question of Cuba. We saw that in recent days, one of Assata Shakur's comrades made transition. You know how they let folks out of jail just so that they can pass away a few months after being out of jail. Matula Shakur and others. Maria Elvira Salazar. Oh, Congresswoman Salazar. Yes, the Miami 27, Little Havana. The woman who back in November, when she endorsed that fool, Javier Milei, who is now the president of Argentina, she praised Argentina as having only one culture, one religion, and one race, completely homogenous. She's a white nationalist and a white supremacist, and she's a hemispheric white nationalist and white supremacist. Cuba means white Cubans for her, whether it be Miami or Havana. Argentina means white Argentinians. There is no one race in Argentinians. There are Afro-Argentinians and indigenous Argentinians as well, but not in the mind of this racist. She did what she's supposed to do. They have no respect for any form of institutions. She had the gavel and she used it. So what we saw there, of course, was an example of the white nationalists and the Republican Party now saying there is no such thing as the U.S. Congress. There is white nationalism. It's a simple courtesy often, and, you know, Lauren, having worked on the Hill, knows about this a lot better than I ever will. You know, when a member comes into a subcommittee that she or he is not on at the time and wants to give a testimony or make some remarks, it's pro forma, except when you've got a white nationalist with the gavel. Maria Salazar knows that she can't face her white nationalist, dying, I might add, white nationalist constituents in South Florida without standing up and saluting her white nationalist ideology. And that's what we saw at play right there.
Lauren, to that particular point, I mean, it's common courtesy in Congress. And Salazar was adamant, oh, no, I will let Democratic Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz speak who is obviously a white member of Congress from Florida, I am not letting this black woman, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, speak.
Yeah, so what it's really about is not that you won't let a member who's not on the subcommittee speak. It's about not letting a member who disagrees with your views speak, which is now becoming a standard Republican practice across the board, a complete intolerance for anybody else's opinion or views, and of course the sort of destruction of custom, which they're increasingly good at, from trying to bring guns onto the floor of the U.S. House, in which Speaker Pelosi then had to install metal detectors, brandishing weapons during committee meetings, all sorts of nonsense, because, you know, that's what you do when you think you're so right about everything and you want to have this sort of threatening, menacing, dangerous air. Now, the other thing that's interesting about this, of course, is the playing around with the live feed, the playing around with the audio and cutting all that off. Because, of course, the other thing that they're all about is hiding what their actions are. You want to talk about consciousness of guilt, hiding what your actions are for everybody else, lest they go back and look at any of this independently in any way. You know, so of course, if they did, there would be a bunch of gaslighting, as there is with the footage from January 6, 2021. But at any rate, it just shows you what this is, which is this is just the production of YouTube videos, the production of video for some fundraising email that was later to go out. That's what the Republicans do during these hearings across the board.
All right, folks, welcome back to Roland Martin Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network. The issue of banning menthol cigarettes has been one that we've talked about on this show on numerous occasions. And the Biden administration is being pushed to make this decision by the 20th to give the Food and Drug Administration at least a year to be able to implement this. And so therefore, it will go into effect by Inauguration Day 2025. Of course, there's been a lot of back and forth that has existed because you've had tobacco interests bringing on and paying civil rights organizations, paying different groups as well in order to advance their interests. And the Biden administration actually had delayed this decision a couple of months ago and said they would make a decision by the month of March. But again, supporters are saying, people who want to get rid of menthol cigarettes say, no, that needs to happen a heck of a lot sooner. Carol McGruder is the co-founder and co-chair of the African American Tobacco Control Leadership Council. She joins us right now. Carol, there was a march, if you will, a funeral procession down Black Lives Matter Plaza in D.C. today, with the rally ending at the in Lafayette Park. So explain to folks, if the Biden administration initially said they'll make a decision by March, why the push for January 20th?
Well, good evening, Roland. First of all, and thank you for having us on. We have been waiting for the ruling on menthol since 2009, when President Barack Obama, at that time, it seems like a century ago, signed the Tobacco Control Act that gave the FDA the authority to regulate the tobacco industry. At that time, all of the flavors in combustible tobacco was taken off the market except for menthol, and that was because that was negotiated. And there was an amendment to the Tobacco Control Act at the behest of the Congressional Black Caucus, Honorable Donna Christensen, that made the FDA have to do something. So we've been waiting since 2009. My organization, the AATCLC, along with ASH and the American Medical Association, the National Medical Association sued the FDA, and they had promised a ruling by 2023. And so here we are in 2024, and we know that this road is fraught with interference by the tobacco industry, and we want to keep ahead of that curve as much as poor people who do public health policy work can in terms of fighting this giant tobacco industry with their billions of dollars of resources. And we want to keep this at the front and center on the Biden-Harris White House, that we are expecting them to keep their word and to save the lives of the 45,000 Black people who die every year in the United States of America from tobacco-induced diseases.
And so again, so the push is for the 20th. What are you hearing? Is it going to happen? Obviously, Big Tobacco is doing all they can. They've been paying black law enforcement executives to say that, if this happens, then black people who with cigarettes are going to be targeted. That's a lie. And different things along those lines. They've had their meetings. They've been trying to get Congressional Black Caucus members to pull back on their support for banning menthol cigarettes, and also paying off other civil rights organizations as well to accept their position.
Yes, and so that's why it's important for us. All of public health was there today. We were so grateful, so humbled, so proud. The Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, the American Heart Association, American Lung Association, American Cancer Society, the Action Network, amongst other African American and people of color organizations were there to say, we want our government to protect Black lives. And so the majority of the people there weren't even African American, which was wonderful, because it was like, we are our brother's keeper, and that this injustice of leaving these products on the market for these decades has to stop. So we see the industry pulling out all the stops, and so we are pulling out all the stops that we have the power to do. And in conjunction with today, the American Conference of Mayors was meeting in D.C. They had their own press conference with some of the leadership of Karen Bass, the mayor of Los Angeles, and other African-American mayors standing up saying, we will not let the pernicious racist targeting of the tobacco industry be flipped and used against us now when we're trying to protect our people and to get these products off of the U.S. market, as Canada has done, as the European Union has done, as Ethiopia has done. And so when we talk about passing a law, Roland, it's not a one and done. This is the beginning. And so we need services for our people. We're taking off one of the most addictive substances on the face of the earth, which is nicotine. And our people need services. And so that's part of, we attended Biden's moonshot. He had a meeting at the White House June 1st of last year about cessation, how to help people to stop smoking. So we're talking about racism. We're talking about the different things, how this shows up in our community and how it needs to be addressed in our community to save Black lives. And so I'm looking at the footage you have, and it just was a glorious day. We came out in the cold. I'm a Californian, and we came out and we showed up, and it was wonderful. It was a wonderful, positive experience to show this country and the rest of the world that we're here. We're not going anywhere. I started this when we used to do the protests. I'd have my Kaiser card. Now I have my Medicare card, Roland. But I'm still here, and I still will continue until this is done, until my people are not being persistently and racistly targeted by the tobacco industry.
Questions from panel. Lauren, you first.
So obviously, I think that this is clearly a money and politics moment. So many of these civil rights groups are completely silent on something they shouldn't be completely silent on. What is your guess as to what the White House is going to do? Do you have any prediction? My colleague, Dr. Valerie Yerger, wrote a research paper almost 20 years ago, Smoking with the Enemy, that documented from the tobacco industry's own documents that have been released because of litigation, how they systematically went after us as Black people. And that has changed. So we have Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated who got out front of this, and they've had 2 resolutions. We have the National Medical Association, our Black doctors. We have the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, who passed a resolution in 2016. So in spite of the tobacco industry interference, there are many important and powerful leadership groups, the National Council of Negro Women with my sister Siobhan in D.C., they've come out. So there are our groups, our leadership groups are in support of this. And they are the groups that actually have a real constituency in terms of voting. The NAACP, the National Council for Negro Women, when they speak to their constituents, they listen, they are respected. Delta Sigma Theta, they are respected. And I think that, as we approach this election year, that the Biden-Harris administration, and we had we had a meeting with them on Zoom, where we could see them and they could see us, and they can see that the people who are voting, who are constituents, are in support of taking this deadly product off the market that kills more Black people than everything else combined. And that it's not magic.
There needs to be some other things that go with it, and we're here to make sure that those other things that go with it, the services, our attorney generals came out with a letter yesterday or this week that, the enforcement that we're talking about, it's not about the individual. It's not about a brother on the corner smoking a cigarette and the police are going to come up and say, is that a menthol? This is about the head of the snake. This is about the tobacco industry, and that these products will no longer be available in our country to be smuggled, to be black marketed. So, and the services that we need with that as well.
Jonquil?
Yes, thank you so much for being here. And I am a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And I'm so proud that we have come out with a resolution and have been very active on this specific issue. What I wanted to say is that there are some reports out there that the Biden administration, Biden-Harris administration has not moved forward with pushing this ban through with the fear of losing the black vote during this election cycle. What are your thoughts on that?
So my thoughts are just what I said, is that we had a call with the White House. So on that call was President Derek Johnson from the NAACP, Siobhan from the National Council of Negro Women. There were people on the call who really do have constituents who listen and who are guided by the organizations that they're members of, Delta Sigma Theta. And I think that the Biden-Harris administration, they really could see that this is not something that the industry, the tobacco industry, is just going to manipulate and have a showing and prey upon our gut feelings of trauma that we've had and experienced in this country as Black people at the hands of police brutality. That's not going to be the trade-off to save the 45,000 Black folks who die every year from this, and that we're not going to allow them to use this as an excuse, as a smokescreen to deal with things that we need to grapple with in this country and that we are grappling with. But in the meantime, we have to grapple with the biggest wolf, the biggest killer, the biggest targeter of Black men, which is Newport cigarettes and Cool cigarettes. Those are the biggest targeters and killers of Black men. It's not the police departments.
Greg? Greg, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Roland. And thank you, Sister McGruder. This might not be, Jonquil asked, I think, the salient question in terms of the politics of it. So I want to ask a question that may not be relevant, and I don't know, but we know yesterday Loper Bright Enterprises versus Raimondo was argued at the Supreme Court. We know the right wing is trying to kick the teeth out of the administrative state. Yesterday, they were talking about this Chevron doctrine. They want to say that courts, not administrative agencies, will have should have the power to interpret statutes. Now, I know that these regs that FDA wants to put forth are pursuant to federal legislation. Are you worried at all that these tobacco companies could come back and say that the courts should decide whether or not menthol and all of the other flavors that have already been banned should be banned or not, and that maybe all of them could be brought back? Or is that something we shouldn't? I mean, obviously, it's nothing we should worry about right now.
We should definitely be concerned about that, because what the tactics of the industry are delay. So anything that they can do to delay the righteous cause that we're fighting, they do. And so we saw in California, we passed a state law to take these products off the market. The tobacco industry collected signatures. They put a referendum on the ballot. We fought the referendum. And 60% of Californians said we want these products off the market. What do? They have a lawsuit. So we anticipate that most likely they will have a lawsuit. And this is, Roland, where you're so important in this equation, is that our people need to wake up and they need to reject these products. Even if you're a menthol smoker, my brother's a menthol smoker, my oldest brother. I have, people, some of my best friends are menthol smokers, so I know the struggle. But whatever you do you want that to pass down to the next generation of Black children, to the next generation of young people? And so this is the norm, the cultural norm that the tobacco industry has created. This is part of what we're fighting. And so this is not going to be something that's going to just happen overnight. It's a process. And we need to begin that process. And so we do anticipate that there will be lawsuits, that they'll do everything that they can, because they do not want to let their hooks out of our community. They do not want to let the 45,000 Black people who would still be alive, people like myself who are mothers, who are fathers, who are grandparents, who are the stability of our families, the fabric of our communities. Those are the people who die prematurely from tobacco-induced diseases. Those are the people that we're protecting, but equally we're saying not another generation. So whether or not, and we're working with services, the CDC is rolling out a menthol campaign, health departments all over the country are getting on board. So it's a process, but our people need to wake up that this is a political issue as much as it is a health issue, and they need to reject these products. And smokers, you're paying tobacco taxes, you're paying for services. So you need to demand that you have cessation, that you have these products that can help you to get off of nicotine. You have a right to those products, and we're fighting equally for that as well.
All right, then. Carol, we appreciate it. Keep up the fight.
I appreciate you, Roland.
All right, thanks a bunch. All right, folks, we come back. Republicans, conservatives constantly attacking DEI. Latest, it's always something CRT, affirmative action, quotas, you name it, anything that advances Black folks, they are against. Well, Black conservatives joins us next and say they don't know what the hell they're talking about. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Support us in what we do. Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. So you're checking money, order to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered. PayPal, R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. We'll be right back.
When you talk about Blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in Black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Farquhar, executive producer of Proud Family.
Bruce Smith, creator and executive producer of The Proud Family, Louder and Prouder. And you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Past several months, you've seen a lot of white conservatives constantly attacking DEI. That's now their new boogeyman. Bill Ackman, this dude right here, a billionaire, he was pissed off with the president of Harvard University, and he called her, said all kinds of different things about her, called her an affirmative action hire. Well, he's been attacking DEI. You also have Elon Musk doing the exact same thing. You've had folks like Mark Cuban, owner of the Dallas Mavericks, out there correcting them and challenging them on these different things. And it now is the newest thing for the right. And so all you hear, DEI in Florida, they now have banned all DEI programs at state universities, saying, I don't care if you get state or federal funding, you can't use DEI in any way whatsoever. Then, of course, you have the same thing happening in Texas. And so the right is doing all they can. They've been attacking Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, saying that, they're focused on woke policies. And so understand, woke, DEI, that's their new targets. And, of course, they use Dr. King's federal holiday birthday to say, if Dr. King was alive, he would be against these things. That's what actually Bill Ackman said. And you know damn well Bill Ackman ain't read a damn book or even more than one speech. He probably even heard one speech by Dr. King, but all of a sudden, he wants to consider himself an expert on Dr. King. They always try to cite Dr. King's 1963 I Have a Dream speech, and they always want to quote the content of character, but they ain't got a damn thing to say about what's at the top of that speech, because that's the real stuff they don't want to address. Joining me now is Dr. Chris Metzler. He's president CEO, Metzler Enterprises. Chris is conservative, and he's made it perfectly clear they don't know what the hell they're talking about. Chris, glad to have you back on the show. And I've said this before, this is the new boogeyman for them. So it's CRT, it's quotas, it's affirmative action. They want to attack anything that confronts the vestiges of racism in this country.
Well, that's correct. But here's the thing. They also want to tout diversity. They also want to say such and such is the first black Republican or conservative to be X, Y, and Z. They're talking about that right now with the governor, the lieutenant governor.
Looks like Chris. You froze. Hey, Chris, you froze there. You were saying the lieutenant governor of
North Carolina, who they have running for governor, they want to tout him as the first black Republican who is successful. Here's the problem with them. The problem with them is you can be diverse so long as you're like them. And that's the difficulty. They're talking about diversity of thought, but whose thought? Diversity of their thought. And the Martin Luther King stuff, now they're trying to redefine what Dr. King said. And the content of character, what the heck does that have to do with employment? Last time I checked, content of character is not an essential function of any job.
Well, and the thing that trips me out with their attacks is they're trying to say, with DEI, you're now hiring incompetent people, who are not qualified. No, what you're doing is you're simply saying to these white folks who are hiring, guess what? Don't just keep hiring white folks. You need to go out and find black candidates, Hispanic candidates, Asian American, Native American, and stop hiring the same old, same old. That's what the real deal is. They're angry that their white boys and white girls can't get the hookup on jobs. They now got to compete.
Well, and if affirmative action has brought all of these unqualified black folks into the workplace, why is it that we do not have more black CEOs? Why is that? And so this whole discussion is disingenuous. And Ackman, in his whole attack on Dr. Gay, first of all, she never committed plagiarism. There were some citation errors she needed to address. And as it relates to his own wife, who was a professor at MIT, she created plagiarism when she was at MIT. So don't give me that crap. They're going back and forth with this nonsense, attacking it, and it's just simply not genuine. Now they're trying to redefine Dr. King's legacy. Charlie Kirk has already said that, in fact, King was not the great civil rights leader. He was a socialist and a communist. And so there is an attempt at this point to redefine his legacy, and that's not going to fly.
I was looking at this one clip. Congressman Dean Phillips, who thinks he's running against Biden, which is a joke. He's removed DEI from his website. And it's amazing how that happened after Bill Ackman gave $1 million to a super PAC supporting his campaign. And he's trying to say, oh, no one can buy me. Dude, stop it. Ackman told you want my money, you got to remove DEI from your website.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's exactly right. Running against Biden doesn't have a snowball's chance in hell of winning, but it's taking the money. And that's the bottom line.
Questions from the panel. Greg, you're first.
Thank you, Roland. Let me make sure I'm on mute. Okay, I'm good. Thank you, Roland, and good to see you, Chris.
Same here.
Yeah, looking at this, I don't want to call him a cockroach, so I won't. Stephen Miller and America First. I think they raised $4 million the first year they were in existence, 21. They raised $44 million in 22 and so forth. They got the EEOC investigating NASCAR. They want them to investigate Lyft and Dick's Sporting Goods on abortion policy, travel policy. Any thoughts on the danger presented by this white nationalist who, as we are on this show, is recruiting lawyers through and in conjunction with the Heritage Foundation to stack up for a second Trump administration? Where does Stephen Miller and America First, these lawyers, fit in this?
Well, here's the biggest danger. If Trump is back in the White House, Stephen Miller is the Attorney General. That's the biggest danger. And so we're talking about this. Don't think that Stephen is doing this because he has nothing else to do. Stephen Miller will be the Attorney General. He's not going to be White House counsel. He's going to be the Attorney General. And so be prepared for that.
Thank you.
Well, and absolutely, that's exactly what they want. Lauren, next.
Yeah, I mean, Chris, I mean, don't you think that almost none of this is new? I mean, it seems like this entire conversation is quite old, actually. I mean, whether it's Chris Rufo or Charles Murray or whoever it is that wants to show up and pretend that they're superior, comes up with that thesis and then tries to build some public policy around it. I mean, isn't this just the old racism superiority talk that we've heard since the beginning of time?
Well, it is the old one, except for the fact that, you know, what we are doing, a number of us in the DEI work, is we are responding. We are on the defense. They have a strategy that is embedded. We are responding, we are reacting, we're doing all of these kinds of things. Traditional civil rights organizations are not in this fight as they need to be in this fight. And as a result of that, every time something comes out, we go, oh, this, and this, but they have a strategic approach. We have a reactionary approach.
Well, and the thing is, Chris, even though, first of all, even though it's old, but it's also new because what they're angry about, they do not like the advancement that African Americans have made, Latinos have made, and so they are using the affirmative action ruling by the Supreme Court to target companies, affinity groups, to target fellowships, to target venture capitalists. And so they want to, this is their entire goal. This is the attack on DEI. They want to dismantle everything that has been put in place to create opportunities for upward mobility for Black people and others. That is their aim because they believe white people are losing out. Chris, your feed is frozen. Let me know when you get Chris back. I'm gonna go to let me know when Chris is back. Jonquil, that really is the deal. They are specifically targeting law firms. A week after the Supreme Court ruling, attorney generals sent letters. Senator Tom Cotton sent letters to law firms saying, oh, your programs are now out of compliance or unconstitutional. And the ruling didn't have a damn thing to do with their programs.
You're exactly right. I mean, it's an attempt to essentially dismantle everything. Going back to when I was growing up, I was in the Upward Bound program. I did the Inroads program. Those are programs for minorities and for Blacks that prepare them for college and prepare them for the workplace. And the eradication of these DEI programs from our institutions, although it's been, in my understanding, a select 5 states at this juncture, it really threatens the future for African Americans and other minorities as well, moving forward with our ability to get into colleges that are predominantly white institutions, our ability to, for upward mobility in corporations and government and all of these different opportunities that are out here. And it's really threatening the future of everyone here. And this is something that I brought up last week about even when affirmative action was dismantled. And so it's an attack. And I believe I said it last week that we need to mobilize and get to work on this and sending these letters to law firms. I mean, one thing about lawyers is that we know the law and we're going to research it. I'm not sure what the tactic is behind that, sending it to law firms that they're out of compliance. No.
I can tell you what the tactic is. We got Chris back. But what they want to do is They want to scare these firms to say, hey, change it or we're going to sue you. And they're going to and actually some law firms, Chris, have already done that. Corporations are doing that. We're seeing a lot of these companies cut back on DEI initiatives. Now, we knew that was going to take place in the aftermath of George Floyd's death. But what they're doing is they're using the affirmative action ruling to scare corporate America to say, y'all better get rid of all these programs or we're coming after you, and they're going to sick Ed Blum. You've got Stephen Miller's law firm trying to tell people, oh, if you think that you've lost the job due to DEI, let us know. They want to go after everyone.
Yeah, and here's the thing, though. The affirmative action case has nothing to do with employment at all. It has nothing to do with employment. But that's exactly what they're using. And employers are saying, oh, we're scared. As a matter of fact, they still have on the OFCCP regulations, there are still affirmative action requirements. Keep in mind, affirmative action is not just about Black people, veterans and women as well. So let's not get confused.
Yep, absolutely. And, Greg, there were a lot of folks who were saying, with the affirmative action ruling, okay, this is going to be a boon for HBCUs. Hello, they are also targeting HBCUs. What people don't understand is your largest HBCUs are public institutions in red states. So you're talking about North Carolina has more HBCUs. Guess what? They're state schools, Mississippi, Florida, Texas. So we see what's going on. So people need to understand that they think that these are going to be sort of, escape areas from these white supremacists. No, they're going to target the HBCUs. Florida got rid of African American Studies program, even teaching sociology.
That's exactly right. And as you say, I mean, almost all of the HBCUs are behind the cotton curtain. They're in the South. And the private institutions aren't safe either because, of course, if you get federal money through grants, through federal financial aid, then that's their point of entry there. Again, I mean, this punk Stephen Miller and this America First is what you said, whether it be Ed Blum, whether it be these billionaires pumping money into them. And remember, you covered this extensively, and you had this conversation ongoing about the Black farmers. It was Miller and those punks at America First that messed up the $4 billion to the Black farmers. It was them that went after the restaurant restoration funds during COVID, and it wasn't that other businesses couldn't apply, but they were supposed to process those minority-owned restaurants first. This is all of their plan. And Chris, as you say, Chris, the SFFA wasn't on its face about affirmative action, but really that is the point of entry to do. And I encourage them in this in one regard, because they're dying and they're fighting for the last dying gasp of their white ethno-state. That is what they're doing. But you can't kill us all, and your babies ain't going to keep coming out in enough numbers to make anything. So they have gotten so desperate that they dropped all pretense of any rule of law, and it's going to come down to this. It's going to come down to whether or not we are going to come together and fight these racists. And there's going to be nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, because they have dropped all pretenses at this point.
Yeah, and when you're looking at HBCUs, remember the 1890s, which are all land-grant institutions. And so there is that as well.
That's right. That's right.
There you go. Chris Metzler, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Folks, when we come back, President Joe Biden talks about broadband expansion in North Carolina, but it also talks about how the economy is improving for everyone, including African Americans. We'll show you what he had to say next on Roland Martin Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network.
Live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture. Weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
We just have one of the oldest cultures that's desperately needed for mutual salvation. That's the consciousness. We have the keys in our roots to save mankind. We get to see the condition of other countries, other oceans, other cultures. And if we believe in God, a lot of us do, He's telling us if you don't get rid of that stuff that makes somebody superior or inferior and work together for the mutual salvation, everybody's gone.
I am Tommy Davidson. I play Oscar on Proud Family, Louder and Prouder.
Right now, I'm rolling with Roland Martin, unfiltered, uncut, unplugged, and undamn believable. You hear me?
President Biden stopped in Raleigh, North Carolina today to announce a new investment from the American Rescue Plan's Capital Projects Fund. $82 million in new investments will connect an additional 16,000 North Carolinians to high-speed internet as part of the Biden-Harris administration's Investing in America agenda. Overall, some $3 billion has been invested in North Carolina to lower costs for families and connect everyone in the state to affordable, reliable, high-speed internet. Now, I know somebody watching right now might be saying, okay, I don't understand what the big deal is, but people don't realize how many folks literally who live in rural America do not have access to high-speed internet. And so we are requiring folks to apply for jobs, to check on medical status, all these sorts of things through the internet, but they have unreliable internet. Some places in North Carolina, I was talking to one guy, they actually rely on Elon Musk's Starlink to be able to access the internet. Some folks like, man, we don't want to do that at all. And so here's Biden talking today in North Carolina.
Bringing opportunity and hope to people and communities across this country. Let me give you one example of bringing high-speed internet to every person in America. Nearly a century ago, Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed the Rural Electrification Act, bringing electricity to every home and farm in America because it was in cities, but it wasn't in a lot of rural areas. Because electricity had become an essential part of modern life. So he wanted sure everyone had access to it. He was determined that no American should be left behind, no matter where they lived, whether in a big city or a rural area. Well, I tell you what, I made the same determination about our time, affordable, high-speed internet. It really is critical. It's just as essential today as electricity was a century ago. Who remembers, during the pandemic when schools were shut down and the Sergeant First Class mentioned it, kids weren't able to attend school, so they go online. How many of you spent time in McDonald's parking lots tapping into their internet so you could do the homework with your kid? Look, think of all the workers who need internet to do their jobs when they're working from home. So many are working from home, have to work. Small businesses need internet to reach more customers here at home and literally around the world. And our seniors are needed in connection with their doctors through telemedicine because they can't make it to the doctors in person. High-speed internet isn't a luxury anymore. It's an absolute necessity. It's an absolute, no, it really is. And yet, when I became president, around 24 million Americans didn't have access to affordable high-speed internet. And for millions more, their internet connection was limited or unreliable. That's why, as soon as I came into office, I took action with what we call the American Rescue Plan. And it included more than $25 billion to invest in affordable internet, high-speed internet all across America.
While speaking, Biden also talked about the improvements to the economy.
Unemployment has been below 4% for the longest stretch in American history in the last 50 years. And here in North Carolina, unemployment is even lower. It's 3.5%. And the stats coming out today show that seeking unemployment insurance has even gone down. Fewer people are needing the help. That's lower than it was in every single month under the last president. Wages are up. Household wealth is up, not only for middle-class Americans, for Latinos, for Black Americans, for minorities.
Details, details, details. The reality is they need to be pounding that home every single day, John Quell, because the bottom line is when you watch, if you look at how mainstream media, how media talks about this here, it's like, oh my God, the world is falling apart. Gas prices are sky high. They've dropped. Inflation is sky high. It's dropped. All these different things. And so what you hear from media outlets, urban Black morning shows and others is, oh my God, they've been awful. They've been terrible. But when you look at the reality, it's a whole different story.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, especially when you're coming after this press conference. You know, it's interesting now, of course, with social media having kind of taken over for a lot of people, and especially a lot of African Americans and a lot of younger ones have taken to social media for their news outlets. And so they're following the Breakfast Club or some of these other blogs, and that's where they're getting their news from. And it's a lot of misinformation that has been distributed in our community. And so it's important that the White House continue to do press conferences like these where we're able to get the real facts of what have been the accomplishments of the Biden-Harris administration.
You know what, Lauren? I saw some BS earlier. Piers Morgan was on the Breakfast Club, and he was talking about how, oh my God, Biden is just too old. He doesn't have any vigor. Kamala Harris has just been awful. She's done nothing for Biden. Then he says to Charlemagne and DJ Envy, you know, and she hasn't done anything for your people. And I'm sitting there going, anybody gonna respond to that lie? And that's what you see. You hear the lies being told. And then when people hear that, go, that's right, he's right, when it's a lie.
Yeah, I have no idea why the hell he was on the Breakfast Club. I have no idea why they would amplify him to the Black community. You know, everything now with media and the Black community, to the point just made, is the Shade Room and the Breakfast Club and Charlemagne the God. And I think that what is happening is a combination of what Reese said last week, a complete lack of strategy and investment by the Democratic Party into communications. And then some of it is just the fact that the driving force for making money on the internet is salacious, controversial content. So people who are on these shows are driven to move salacious and controversial content that is often inaccurate, delivered by people who don't know anything about public policy or politics. That doesn't seem to matter to anybody. And so as long as the thing is being clicked, they really don't care. So what's happening is a form of misinfo and disinfo at a really critical time in a really critical year. So instead of talking about how dangerous Donald Trump is, we're putting people like Piers Morgan on the Breakfast Club so he can run his mouth and say negative stuff about Kamala Harris. So you got to be kidding me. We've got Donald Trump quoting Adolf Hitler, but we're attacking Kamala Harris. So right there, that is completely ridiculous, right? So, but that's what everyone has decided. I shouldn't say everybody, but that's what many have decided to do for some reason. And it is absolutely dangerous. But a lot of that on the front end is the lack of strategy and investment by the Democratic Party, which has now reached a critical level. Been talking about it for years and years before Donald Trump even got on the scene in 2016. And now we have Donald Trump because of that. And I just don't know how to explain it. The Democratic Party has plenty of money. There's record amounts of fundraising coming in, records amount of millions of dollars coming in, and they still refuse to invest in communication strategy at a time when our technology is all about communications. And I don't know how you didn't learn this in 2016 when the Russians interfered with our election because of that strategy in part. But here we are.
Well, I dare say this here, and I absolutely agree with investment. I agree with all of those different things. But I'm sorry, Greg, I don't need somebody to invest in me to know how to use Google. The bottom line is, the bottom line is the information is literally there. It's been posted on social media. It's posted on whitehouse.gov. It's actually been covered. We talk about it constantly on this show. And so if a Piers Morgan comes on and lies, it's real easy to say, Piers, that's a lie. He literally said, oh, she's done nothing for your people.
Right.
And nobody said, Charlemagne or Envy didn't say almost $7 billion to HBCUs, didn't say record enrollment for the third consecutive year for Affordable Care Act, which has dropped actually the number of black people who are uninsured with health care, didn't say anything about the billions invested in black small businesses, didn't say anything along those lines. Those are undeniable facts. Again, the closing of the black and white wage gap, when you talk about under Biden-Harris, the lowest black unemployment rate ever, those are easy things to say, no, Piers, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Go back to England.
Well, it's easy for you, which is why he would never come on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Oh, no, he ain't coming on here. In fact, at the beginning of his people actually reached out, maybe it was a couple months ago, his people reached out to me for one of his shows, and I said, sure, let's do it. I knew once they went back and told him I was booked, he was like, oh, hell no. So it was no surprise I was unbooked and haven't been called back. So yeah, Piers Morgan, he don't want this smoke.
No question. And with all due respect to Leonard McKelvey and Rashawn Casey, no human being in the world should listen to either of them on anything political. That's why they go on those shows, because we're in a propaganda war right now.
Right.
Lauren just laid this out. I can only agree with everything she said. And I would say that, Biden-Harris is in trouble right now. On foreign policy, they're getting their asses handed to them because babies are being killed as we speak in occupied Palestine. And today, Bibi Netanyahu said that Israel must control the entire area from the river to the sea. Netanyahu is trolling the world. And guess what? Genocide Joe has now got a nickname hung on him because he is so stuck on stupid that he is about to lose actively engaged voters in these key states like Michigan, for example. And when he's faced with that, he has to now politicize this and politicize this money that was passed, because billions of dollars going to these Republican districts, these white nationalists are claiming credit for the very legislation they voted against, and he's still talking bipartisanship. See, he's not going to be banged up. He's going to be in Delaware or wherever he's going to be on his boat chilling with his sunglasses on, dark Brandon, and our people in harm's way are going to take the L. He has lost so many votes on the foreign policy because of his incorrect support of these fascist racists in Israel. So he can forget that. The least he can do on the domestic side is now ball up his fist and swing, but he's not going to do that. And as far as people researching, it's not research, it's searching. When people Google stuff, they searching. It ain't research, and they not even gonna do that. They would rather listen to somebody who named himself after the head of the Holy Roman Empire and got the nerve to call himself God, which is during my generation, my mother's generation, would have been considered blasphemy, and a bunch of damn entertainers. This is the state of the American people, and we are all in harm's way. And this is all very deliberate. And if we're gonna fight, we better figure out how to fight now. And I don't think the mummy is up to it, quite frankly. We might have to take this case to the people, because it ain't gonna go by.
I've made it clear, and y'all understand. I'm not gonna let nobody come on this show or any show that I'm on, or even if I'm sitting on a panel or anywhere, or hell, if I'm sitting in the Uber, I'm not gonna let somebody lie.
Right.
If you lie, I'm gonna check you right there. And because I keep saying to folk, you don't know who's on the other end of what you're doing. You don't know who's listening or watching. And you could be allowing a lie to be reinforced by your silence when the lie is stated.
That's right.
And in fact, I actually said that on the Breakfast Club before. That's what we have to understand. You can't allow lies to be weaponized because those who are not fully engaged with the information may hear it and go, man, Piers Morgan, he's a smart guy. He would know. And he said, they ain't enough for our people. It was a flat out lie. These things are happening over and over and over again. And yes, people need to understand. We are about to be engaged. We are in the middle of a massive misinformation, disinformation campaign. There are people who are deliberately putting out false information. They are deliberately putting out information that will inflame people to get them mad and upset and to keep them from actually going to the polls. We must understand that. And Republicans are sitting there going, please, by all means. What did Donald Trump do in 2017? He said, black people, thank you for not voting. Now, when a white supremacist thanks black people for not voting, every black person should be offended because you know exactly what that means. All right, folks, when we come back, Spelman College gets a $100 million donation, the largest ever of any HBCU. We'll talk with the president next, right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
Grow your business or career with Grow with Google's wide range of online courses, digital training, and tools. Gain in-demand job skills with flexible online training programs designed to put you on the fast track to jobs in high-growth fields. No experience is necessary. Learn at your own pace. Complete the online certificate program on your own terms. Stand out to employers, get on a path to in-demand jobs, and connect with top employers who are currently hiring. Take one professional career certificate program or all 6. Earn a Google Career Certificate to prepare for a job in a high-growth field like data analytics, project management, UX design, cybersecurity, and more. All professional career certificate programs must be completed by December 31st, 2024. Scan the QR code to complete the application. There are 1,000 scholarships available. Grow with Google and J. Hood and Associates. Be job ready and qualify for in-demand jobs.
On a next, A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, we talk about a hard, cold fact. Not all healthcare is created equal in this country, especially if you're a person of color.
So many of us, Black families, we rely upon each other heavily. A lot of us aren't necessarily sure how to best communicate with our healthcare providers.
How to take charge and balance the scales. Your life may depend on it. That's next on A Balanced Life on Black Star Network.
Me, Sherry Shepard, and you know what you're watching, Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Folks, Spelman College is receiving its largest single donation ever. In fact, it's the largest of any HBCU ever, a $100 million donation from one of its board members. Joining us now is the president of Spelman College, Dr. Helene Gayle. Doc, glad to have you on the show. You've been beaming ear to ear since announcing this huge donation. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, it's pretty incredible. You know, $100 million. That's a lot of money, and it's going to make a huge difference for Spelman College and for young women who are bright and qualified but don't have the financial resources to attend Spelman. So, you know, I'm just thrilled by this gift. It brought me to tears.
Now, for folks who don't know, the gift came from Rhonda Stryker and her husband, William Johnson, who's the chairman of Greenleaf Trust. She's been a member of the Board of Trustees for Spelman for a number of years.
She has. She's one of our longest serving trustees. She is an incredibly generous donor. She's contributed a huge amount already to Spelman, but this is the largest single gift that she's contributed. And as you said, it's the largest single gift of any HBCU. So this is historic.
Didn't the two of them give $30 million about 5 years ago?
Yeah, they contributed $30 million for a new building, our building for the Center for Innovation in the Arts that will be named after my predecessor, Mary Schmidt Campbell. But they've also given other dollars to help to make Spelman more global and allow our students to be able to travel around the world, to be able, they've contributed to other scholarship programs. So they have been incredible over so many years, but this is a game changer. It's historic.
How did this come about? Did she just call you up and say, hey, I'm about to do something? Or were there conversations the two of you had over a period of time? How did this transpire?
Well, you know, there's been conversations that she's had with me, my predecessors, the chair of our board, our former board chair. And I think it's something that she's been thinking about for a while because, you know, she really has committed so much to Spelman. She believes in our mission. She believes that, you know, Spelman is an institution that changes and transforms people's lives. And so I think this is something she's been thinking about for a while.
How are you going to use the money? How is it going to be partitioned?
So most of it will go to scholarships. And, you know, I think, you know, that's a big passion for her. I think it's clearly been a passion for me since I've come on to Spelman. I see so many talented young women who, you know, lives are changed as a result of getting this education, but many of them leave strapped with debt. And there are so many more who have the talent but don't have the access and the opportunity. So being able to endow scholarships, and this is not to give out today, tomorrow. This is to endow for our endowment so that far into the future, we will be able to support young women, outstanding, bright, brilliant young women who will benefit from a Spelman education. You know, we will also be able to give scholarships to young women who are there today, but this is really about securing the future.
Questions from our panel. John Quill, you're first.
Yes, this is such an exciting time, an exciting day. I mean, I myself am a graduate of Clark Atlanta University, so I went to school right next door, and I also took classes at Spelman while I was at Clark Atlanta. So for those that don't know, the Atlanta University Center, which comprises Spellhouse, Morehouse, Clark Atlanta, Morris Brown, the ITC, a lot of buildings we share. We share the library, the Woodruff Art Center. We take classes on each other's campuses. There's land that is shared also amongst the universities. And so with this being such a historic gift, and I know it's very early on, is there any way that it will benefit the entire AUC, or maybe some of those shared buildings and things like that that we all share with one another?
Well, you know, the way I think it will benefit not only the AUC, but HBCUs in general, is that I think this is a landmark gift. And I think it says that it is worth investing in HBCUs. We have been so underinvested for so long. And as you know, going to Clark, you know, we punch well above our weight, but we don't have the resources that many of our peer, predominantly white institutions have. So, you know, while these resources are really primarily for scholarships for Spelman, I think that it lifts the sights and the vision and the inspiration for all HBCUs. So I'm hoping that this is a sign that says to other donors that HBCUs are worth investing in, and worth investing in a big way.
Mm-hmm.
Greg.
Thank you, Roland, and thank you, and congratulations, President Gill. Great news for HBCUs in the last week or so. We all saw the $100 million that the Lilly Endowment gave to UNCF for this pooled endowment for smaller schools. I have a couple of questions. You know we all have a lot of these good young sisters who get into Spelman, very competitive, and then can't afford it. How might this gift transform your capacity to offer scholarships for students? Because, and I know sometimes, I know you've heard it, Spelman gets a bad rap, say, yeah, you can get in, but they don't give a whole lot of money out. Now, I don't think that's true, but that's one question. And the other question, I think, Rich, is pursuant to that as well. A lot of folks, and I've been teaching at Howard the last 23 years, so I know we come up against this as well. A lot of folks might not understand how the 3/4 you're going to put toward the endowment for endowing scholarship works. People might think you're going to give that money out. Do you mind explaining how an endowed scholarship pool works differently than just giving out $75 million worth of scholarships over X number of years? Thank you, first of all.
Yeah, thank you for those questions. So first of all, I think, it is partly true we don't have the resources that we would like to be able to give out to our students. And so, we do have many students who get into Spelman and then can't continue because they just don't have the resources. They got in and they were hoping that they could figure it out and it could work. But after taking out loans and after their parents taking out loans, it's just not feasible. And so, this hopefully will be one of the ways in which we'll be able to help with that. Our student population, 40% are Pell eligible, so come from the lowest economic status. We give out about 80%. 80% of our students are on some sort of need-based loan. So we have a high need population, but we also have a population of young women who are academically gifted and talented. And so, that's where we want to be able to fill that gap, where there is that talent and that capability and potential, we want to be able to match that with the financial resources. So on endowments, endowments are just like putting money into a money market, savings account, or anything else that any of us do, where we try not to cut into the principal. We want to make sure that that keeps earning interest. And so from that interest that comes from investing our endowment, that's what we will then spend for scholarships. And that's what keeps us able to then continue to give scholarships on and on and on, because we keep that principal to keep working for us and then spend the interest that comes from our investments.
Yes.
Lauren?
President Gale, how are you? I wonder when you have these big donations, are there any stipulations on this type of donation? Do they in any way try to control how you spend the money, or do you get to pretty much do what you like?
Well, it depends on the donor and how much of a relationship they have with the institution, how much they see this as a partnership. In the case of Rhonda Stryker, she's been a board member for a long time. I think she trusts that Spelman will do well with the resources. But she did say the general categories that she and her husband wanted the resources to be spent on. So, most of it going into endowments for scholarships, some of it also going to help to upgrade our housing, some of it to do innovations in our academic programs, and then to have some discretion for immediate needs. So, she gave us some broad outlines, but also understood that this is about a partnership, and she had faith in Spelman and that Spelman would use these resources wisely.
First of all, what's the student population at Spelman?
About 25, just under 2,500.
And normally, what is your incoming class?
Where or how many?
No, the size of your incoming freshman class.
It fluctuates between 600 to almost 800 in some of the years that it's been very high.
So if you look at the annual tuition, it's about $29,000. So that means if you have 600 students coming in, let's say if Spelman decides to say, okay, we're going to grant a $5,000 scholarship to each incoming student, that means that you're going to be spending about $3 million annually. And so when you talk about these scholarships, just sort of how are you thinking about that? You're thinking in terms of incoming, or you're saying, hey, let's look at distributing scholarships to folks who are freshmen, sophomore, juniors, and seniors. When I did a scholarship with McDonald's a couple of years ago, I told them I only wanted the scholarships for juniors and seniors. I said, because a lot of programs are set up for people who are high school seniors. I said, but the problem is a lot of students who go to HBCUs, they may spend their first and second year there, but when they get to that third year, many of them simply can't afford to go. So how are you thinking about, breaking that up to assist students?
So, this is a new gift, and we're still thinking through all of the ways in which we will use the resources, the interest, what comes from the investment, how we will use that over time. There weren't specific stipulations that said that it had to go to one class or another. And I think what we want to really do is do it in a thoughtful way that makes sure that we're giving resources to students at greatest need, and that we can help to fill that gap so that students who come to Spelman don't leave with a huge debt burden, or that they can't, students who really can be competitive at Spelman aren't able to do it because of finances. So we're still thinking through some of those details, but I think we want to do it in a way that really helps to bridge that gap between the incredible talent and potential and the financial needs that exist.
All right then, President Gale, we surely appreciate it. Thanks a bunch. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
All right, thanks a lot, folks. When we come back, we'll talk about the Department of Justice. They dropped their analysis of what happened in Uvalde, Texas, where 21 kids were gunned down, and it is not good for law enforcement. We'll discuss it next, right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Be sure to support us in what we do. Send your check and money order to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Send your check and money order to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered. PayPal, R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Be sure to get a copy of my book, White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds, available at bookstores nationwide. Get the audio version on Audible. We'll be back.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind $100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
On the next Get Wealthy with me, Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, nurses are the backbone of the healthcare industry, and yet only 7% of them are Black. What's the reason for that low number? Well, a lack of opportunities and growth in their profession. Joining us on the next Get Wealthy is Needy Bartanilli. She's going to be sharing exactly what nurses need to do and what approach they need to take ownership of their success.
So the Black Nurse Collaborative really spawned from a place and a desire to create opportunities to uplift each other, those of us in the profession, to also look and reach back and create pipelines and opportunities for other nurses like us.
That's right here on Get Wealthy, only on Black Star Network.
Me, Sherry Shepard, with Sammy Roman.
I'm Dr. Robin B., pharmacist and fitness coach, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
A complete failure. That's what the Justice Department calls a law enforcement response to the shooting in Uvalde on May 24th of last year. The 610-page report is comprised of more than 14,000 pieces of data and documentation, including training logs, audio, video, closed caption video, photographs, personal records, and investigative records of more than 260 interviews of people involved or affected, including police officers, elected officials, hospital workers, and survivors. During a news conference on Thursday, U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland said that the victims deserve better from law enforcement.
The department's review concluded that a series of major failures in leadership, in tactics, in communications, in training, and in preparedness were made by law enforcement leaders and others responding to the mass shooting at Robb Elementary. The law enforcement response at Robb Elementary School on May 24, 2022, and in the hours and days after, was a failure that should not have happened. We hope to honor the victims and the survivors by working together to try to prevent anything like this from ever happening again, here or anywhere. The massacre at Robb Elementary shattered families throughout this community and devastated our country. 19 children and 2 teachers were killed. And untold numbers of students, teachers, and law enforcement officers were injured. The law enforcement response to the mass shooting at Robb Elementary was a failure. As the threat posed to our country by mass shootings has grown and evolved over the past several decades, law enforcement's response tactics have also changed. The massacre at Columbine High School 25 years ago and the 47 minutes it took for law enforcement to enter that high school marked a major shift in how law enforcement leaders think about responding to mass shootings. It is now widely understood by law enforcement agencies across the country that in active shooter incidents, time is not on the side of law enforcement. Every second counts. And the priority of law enforcement must be to immediately enter the room and stop the shooter with whatever weapons and tools officers have with them. That is the approach responding officers first employed when they arrived at Robb Elementary School. But within minutes of arriving inside the school, officials on scene transitioned from treating the scene as an active shooter situation to treating the shooter as a barricaded subject. This was the most significant failure. That failure meant that law enforcement officials prioritized the protracted evacuation of students and teachers in other classrooms instead of immediately rescuing the victims trapped with the active shooter. It meant that officials spent time trying to negotiate with the subject instead of entering the room and confronting him. It meant that officials asked for and waited for additional responders and equipment instead of following generally accepted active shooter practice and moving toward the shooter with the resources they had. It meant waiting for a set of keys to open the classroom door, which the report concludes was likely unlocked anyway. And it meant that the victims remained trapped with the shooter for more than an hour after the first officers arrived on scene.
Folks, the Uvalde, Texas shooting is one of the deadliest in United States history. As he said, 19 children and 2 teachers died in the massacre. Lauren, we think about what happened there. I mean, this was shameful and despicable. Frankly, Texas Governor Greg Abbott should be ashamed of himself. Local law enforcement, Texas Department of Public Safety. I mean, you had hundreds of law enforcement there, and they frankly sat on their asses and were scared to go in.
Yeah, they were scared to go in, and that really contrasts with what we see in a lot of other shooting incidents. Unfortunately, we have so many in this country that we can compare and contrast very easily. And for example, the shooting at the Covenant School in Tennessee, if you remember the footage from that, I think there were 3 law enforcement officers with high-powered weaponry that went in right away and took down the shooter very quickly. In this particular episode, which is extremely strange, these cops apparently were afraid to go in, and of course, what we're left with is one of the most famous, incidents in that Uvalde massacre was that young mother who was begging cops to go in and eventually snuck around the police, went into the school, and got her kids out. Can't get any more cowardice than that. She had no gun, she had nothing. She went in and got her kids. I mean, it was just extremely strange because you typically do see from law enforcement, and again, unfortunately, because the United States has so many mass shootings that these departments have a protocol for this. Even the smaller departments have a protocol for this, which is that you go in as quickly as possible and you confront the person who is murdering people as quickly as possible. This was a really strange thing, and if you remember, the chief of that area, Pete Arredondo, came up missing and had to be hunted down by a correspondent on CNN. It was very strange. It remains very strange. I'm not sure why it took this long to do this report. It was sort of known in the first 2 months that there was a massive failure here. And it's just so terrible because these were little kids that were killed. And, of course, the bigger problem is the amount of high-powered weaponry that we allow people to go in and purchase very easily. But it was a shameful thing that members of this department were scared to go in and confront this 19-year-old.
John Quell?
This incident, which is horrifying to even revisit, which we have to keep doing, it's, number one, it's a lack of training, a lack of protocol. From what I read in the article, that one of the high-ranking police officers in the department didn't bring his radio. So you're one of the top commanding officers there, and you don't have your radio to send out commands to or through dispatch or anything to communicate with the police officers there. The prosecutor's office also gave a press conference and discussed about investigating for any potential criminal conduct. But however, in the Texas code, I was unable to find anything that could find any of these officers criminally liable for their behavior. There's one specific misdemeanor, which would be the official oppression, which reads in section 39.03, a public servant acting under color of his office or employment commits an offense if he intentionally subjects another to mistreatment or to arrest, search, seizure. And so essentially, that's the only thing. And so we're talking about a misdemeanor because they're discussing that they're investigating them for criminal conduct. But this is something that has to be addressed by the Texas legislature, right? I mean, they've got to address this kind of egregious behavior. 77 minutes, all the deaths of these children and of these teachers. I mean, it's horrifying. And, it's interesting because we have the issues of excessive force used by all these police officers across the country, which we regularly talk about on this show. The Washington Post published an article where $1.5 billion are spent paying for officers in their use of excessive force. But in contrast, when we have these mass shootings, they're not doing anything. And it's a problem. I mean, it's a problem. It's a systematic problem with training, with the hiring and retention of these officers. It's a problem, and it's just so tragic.
Greg?
Yeah. When you're dealing with others, it's very easy to do what these cowards did. The shovel-mouthed coward who is the governor of Texas, the Texas legislature, state and local officials, when they're dealing with others, other people's children, perhaps their brown children, it's not your children, other people's teachers teaching other people's children. Then you sit out with your puffed up vests and chests, with your thumbs in your collar, like you're on an episode of Chicago PD, and you pretend with your funky boots on like you're some kind of funky Texas Ranger. And so, none of that is surprising. We saw that in real time. What should be, I think it is, equally disturbing for all of us, maybe even more disturbing, is in the wake of the slaughter, the misinformation campaign, the attempt to paint it as if it was something that it wasn't. This is where the true cowardice comes out, because at the end of the day, even though you treat others differently, you're still a human being. And they should now wear the mark of you should be ostracized. Forget shame. We don't care whether they're shamed themselves. We should ostracize them. These people should be exiled from our common community of humanity. They're going to keep their badges. They're going to keep their guns, even though they won't be shooting them in defense of anyone, probably at us. But they shouldn't be able to go to the grocery store, the gas station, or anywhere else without people simply just looking the other way. And if they make eye contact, just shake your head. Why? Because we have to change the society. We will continue to fight to change the society. But people like this and action like this, even if you can't change it immediately in the courts or in policymaking, you can damn sure change it in the way you treat these people every day.
Absolutely. Folks, I certainly appreciate it. Thank you so very much. Greg, Jonquel, Lauren, thanks so much. Folks, that's it for us. I will see you all tomorrow right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Don't forget to support us in what we do by joining our Brina Funk fan club. Your donations are critically important to our growth. You do the work that's really important. See your checking money order, P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered. PayPal, or Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. And don't forget to get a copy of my book, White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds. Available in bookstores nationwide. We'll be right back. I see you tomorrow right here on the show. Holla! Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?